How you doing, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours, Bryan, Alvarez, and myself, and we're going to have Bryan BLAIR up in about half an hour as well, talking pro wrestling, talking about last night's SmackDown, and all of the latest news. Bryan, how are you?
I'm doing good.
That's good. That's good. I guess we will start with, might as well start with SmackDown. SmackDown did a 4.2 rating, by the way, which finished third among the 6 networks. So it's up a little bit from last week, which I guess in 4.2 is not a great number considering there's no competition, but considering also that the rating pattern has been down, when you have a show that was up, I guess, 0.3 from last week, I guess you got to consider that good right now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's positive.
Yeah. So I thought the show was a hell of a show.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to put down the main event in any way, but I think that the main event, again, was one of those matches where I think I would have enjoyed it more if I didn't know what was going to happen.
Really?
Yeah. I think there's just a lot of spots, like the crossface spots and that sort of thing, where if I didn't know, what was up, I would have gotten into it more.
I really liked the main event because it was different than, Austin and Benoit had, it's like they had 2 totally different matches on Monday and Tuesday. And this one was, it reminded me of an All Japan match in that they built a couple of, big spots to make it memorable. When it's over, you remember the 4 reversals or whatever it is, 3 reversals of the sharpshooter and the 10 German suplexes. And
the suplex on the table.
The 2 suplexes on the table, yeah.
Especially the second one.
Yeah, and they sold those, and they sold those spots really great. So, it was like this match, I kind of felt when it was over, like this was a match that had an identity rather than just your typical main event. This is a great match, which they had many of. But still, I guess because of the finish, I didn't think that it was overall. In some old style ways it was better, psychology ways it was better. But I thought the match in San Jose, the match in Anaheim, those 2 matches were better than this one as far as best TV match. Some people are saying best TV match of the year. I thought it was among the best TV matches of the year, but I don't know. I wouldn't rate it the best. Just put it that way.
I don't think I would put it above the TLC or the tag match either.
Yeah. But I thought overall, a lot of good stuff on the show. Eddie Guerrero is tremendous.
Yes, he is. What's gotten into Eddie?
Yeah, just that character, and I really like Rhino and Raven a lot. It was a 3.5 minute match, but it's just those hardcore matches all look the same, and then this one, it was like they just did spots that you didn't see coming. And I just thought that made it just a lot more enjoyable. Although way too many headshots still with weapons, which that's kind of scary, But
yeah,
that's what those matches are.
Kind of Raven's goal though is to try and do something innovative in all these hardcore matches, and it's good.
Yeah,
I was getting so bored with those hardcore matches lately.
Yeah, it breaks the mold and everything like that. Yeah. Did not like Spike Dudley last night in that interview where he goes, "Molly, I like you."
Remember the delivery we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have the delivery. That was so hokey.
Yeah.
When Paul Heyman's making fun of you, something's wrong.
Yeah. So I guess that was kind of a negative there. Any other comments as far as show? I noticed that a lot of the stuff that happened in Edmonton was edited off. It looked like watching the show that it was a really tight show. They cut 3 or 4 minutes.
Promo.
What? Edge's promo, 3 or 4 minutes out of the main event. Just a lot of things, just the way they ended the show. They did that finish and they were right off the air. It just seemed to me that, they had just about, 2 hours and 10 minutes worth of stuff. And then they had to, in post-production, get it down to 2 hours. Because, also, some people had given me, the times of the, one guy actually called me up on Tuesday night with the times of the matches. And I noticed that, many of the matches were a lot shorter than their times were live, so they were editing spots out of a lot of the matches. One thing about the editing people for WWF, they're fantastic because you watch that show and it's seamless. When I used to watch,
you never notice.
When you watch Japanese
3 minutes out of the main event, where would that be? I think there was one reversal at the very end of that match. It looked a little bit choppy, so it might have been right there, but I don't know.
Well, they edited.
Some of a hell of a job.
Well, there was one spot which was the diving headbutt into the belt, right? And that was the 10-minute mark of the match, and it was at the 6.5-minute mark, I think, on television. So most of what was edited out was in the first 10 minutes of the match.
Okay.
But, so, I know. But, I don't know. Really Really good there. There was no competition on television at all last night. Couple of notes here. The Walker Texas Ranger show tomorrow night is going to be the Owen Hart. Isn't it amazing that everything I know that CBS probably when they made their schedule has no idea that this is the 2-year anniversary of the death of Owen Hart. They just are throwing reruns out there, and they're rerunning that show. And did you watch that show, Bryan? I don't even remember.
I avoided it.
Okay, I did watch it, and it was a terrible episode. So I'm not encouraging anyone to watch it unless you really want to see bad. You want to see something that involves wrestling, but it's a bad episode. But the point where in this one, of course, the promoter's the promoter's out there to murder the guy. It's a promotional war gimmick or something like that. So it's when he falls from the ceiling in his blue blazer costume, somebody slices the cord. You know what I mean? It's not an accident. But to watch, when the thing ran the first time, and to watch a guy in a blue blazer costume go down from the ceiling, and die like that, even, in a television show, it just was, the reaction I had was so horrible. And for sure, I'm not going to watch it again. Even if it had been a good show, it was just that, it was too closely exploiting that thing and too graphic, I guess. So anyway, I hated that show, and now I'm plugging it. But just want you to know that it's on tomorrow night on CBS. And see, Matt Raffs is considering changing its name. So if you have suggestions, in fact, we got.
It's a heavy news day when this is at the top of the show, one of the main stories.
Hey, it's a heavy news week. What can I say?
I was just thinking about that earlier today. It was 2.5 months ago, or 3 months ago, or whatever. We're talking about, is Eric Bischoff going to buy WCW? Is Vince McMahon going to buy WCW? Is the thing going to just die and go out of business? And now, 3 months later, Matt Raffs is going to have a name change, and we're looking for suggestions.
2 months later. Well, that's it. Antonio Inoki's not running for office. So, got that one. They were trying to draft him to run for office, and he turned it down today.
Draft him?
What? Yeah, one of the political parties had asked him, believe it or not, he's got a famous name, was in there for 6 years in, 89, 95. And they asked him if he would run, and he said no. So, that's good, I guess.
Didn't want a pay cut.
Yeah, among other things. Let's see, the top of the Super Junior tournament will be going to the finals. The finals are Monday in Osaka, Japan. It's Jushin Liger and Minoru Tanaka. And the general feeling, and we'll see if they... There's something that makes total sense, which does not mean that they won't do it, but it doesn't mean that they will, right? Okay, Minoru Tanaka is the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. Generally speaking, you use this tournament to create a logical contender. And they got a big show July 20th at the Sapporo Dome, and it would make sense for Jushin Liger to win the Super Junior tournament by beating Minoru Tanaka, the champion, and of course bringing them back to the Sapporo Dome for the big show for a championship match. That all makes sense. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen that way.
Does that make American sense, or does that make Japanese sense?
Japanese sense.
Sometimes they have that idea of, if you have the champion, he should be able to win the tournament.
But then how does that build up the championship match?
Actually, in Japan, they've done it before. It didn't make sense then, but there's a precedent.
Well, usually when they do that, it's because the champion is about to do an interpromotional match against somebody from another company. So by establishing, as the big, he's the world champion and he just won the tournament. So then when he faces the guy from the other company, it's the top. You know what I mean? He's clearly the top guy. There's no confusing who the number one guy is here. I think that if you're building up something within the promotion, it doesn't make. They could do it. It doesn't really matter. It's not like it's the main event, but we'll see how they do it. It's Monday in Osaka. Today in Takamatsu, they did what essentially were the semifinals, although it was the last day of the round robin. Jushin Liger beat Silver King, and he won the A block by winning that match with a brainbuster. And then in the B block, it was Minoru Tanaka, Dr. Wagner Jr., and Akira, who were all tied with 3-1 records. So Akira wrestled Shinya Makabe and was upset, which actually makes sense. So then later in the show, they had what essentially was the B block championship match. So it's the biggest win of Shinya Makabe's career. They're giving him a big push, and he's a good worker. They got some young guys there. They're good athletes, and he's one of them. And then Tanaka beat Dr. Wagner with an E-lock, so that sets up the big match. So that's what's going there. And what else do I have? On the show yesterday, we were talking about Rob Van Dam having signed, and Rob Van Dam then posted something probably right around the end of our show or right after the show was over, that he has in fact got his contract. He got his contract about a week or two ago, I think, from the WWF, and they have verbally agreed to terms, but he has not put pen to paper, so he has officially not signed his contract, but, he's coming in, unless something, totally falls apart. And, actually, that's largely today's news. Got any other news?
No.
That's it? Okay, well, wow, that's quick. Any more, we will start with emails before we get Bryan BLAIR up. And he goes, this is from Tony Fleming, who goes, I believe you know the answer to this question. Actually, I think I know the answer. He goes, I would like to hear you say, so I'm sure, okay? All of these news boards are talking about the WF shopping the new WCW show to other networks like Fox. Please, could you clear up for me if the WF's TV deal forbids them for broadcasting any shows other than on a Viacom-owned station? If this is not the case, what are the conditions they could use another company? Based on what I was told the other day, and based on what I understand, they have an exclusive contract with Viacom as far as for cable television, not for broadcast television. So theoretically, but I think they have an exclusive with UPN for broadcast television. So I don't think they can go to Fox. I know they can't go to Fox Sports Net unless Viacom lets them, which Viacom will not do. They cannot go to TBS unless Viacom lets them, which Viacom will not do because Viacom is spending $28 million a year for the exclusive rights to broadcast WWF pro wrestling programming, and they're not going to spend that kind of money and then let a rival network have a show. That was what screwed up the deal when Vince McMahon last year tried to buy WCW, and Bischoff ended up getting it, was because Viacom would not waive that provision. I actually had some contact with one of the top guys in WWF when some of these rumors were getting going. But some of the rumors they've outright denied already. In fact, basically, with the people who have talked with the WWF, everyone denies all these stories anyway. But I go I basically asked when one of them was going, they said Viacom will not be waiving this. So I don't think that there's, I hate to say there's no chance because in wrestling, things change so fast that things that a month ago were impossible are happening. So, when ratings
especially
go down.
Lately.
Yeah. Well, when ratings go down and when business goes down, a lot of things that people would do, maybe if things go down, Viacom's going to go, oh my God, we're losing, the TNN audience is going down at a pretty healthy clip ever since we lost our competition on Monday. Maybe the best thing for us to do is actually allow competition, even if it's fake competition and it's us against ourselves on Monday night, because it ended up building both ratings. So and actually, I'll tell you what, I've talked to some people in the last couple of weeks, about television. No one can get it, which we've talked about. But I always go if you can get TV, I would go with 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Monday night. It's the best time because it'll build both shows. We've already seen it. That's what happens.
And it's so funny because look at 6 months ago, we were always thinking, what they need to do is move Nitro to Wednesday or something like that and get it away head to head from Raw. And now it's maybe that would be the best time.
There are so many things. I was writing. I wrote something today, by the way, for next week's Observer about. I was writing about pay-per-view, and the more I wrote about pay-per-view, the more I realized that there are things that, when you economically look at them and make sense, it just doesn't work out that way in wrestling, and I don't know why that is. But it's. Let's see. This is from John, who said that he thought yesterday's show was a bit of a letdown. It was interesting, but I feel you were not able to discuss anything at length. I didn't realize that you were going to talk about the Thanksgiving SmackDown. I was hoping there would be something not quite as light. Well, what can I say? I thought that Mick Foley was very, very honest. When we have had WWF people on the show in the past, which we're not allowed to have, but as far as why we had him, people have been asking. I really don't know the answer. We just did, but I guess because he's promoting the book.
Tour thing.
He's promoting the book, and also because I think
we almost had China on when she was promoting her book. Remember?
Not as almost as this one, but also because I helped him with it. I think also because I helped him with the book.
When we ran down the Tower Records that night at WWF, the restaurant, we might have gotten China.
That was the day that you were in New York, right, Dave?
The day that I was in New York, yeah.
She
China was right next door.
In the studio with you.
That's right. So we would probably go to the gym and see if I could bench press her afterwards. But
she would have beat you.
What? Well,
if I would have said something negative about her, she would have punched you.
Didn't happen. Yeah. So let's see. But as far as I just thought, like, when we talked about, like, things, he was pretty honest about, like, the TV kind of gotten stale and what he liked and what he didn't like. The stuff about Shane McMahon that he said is the same stuff we've said. But I would bet you if we had,
anybody else
from the WWF, and we go, Shane was really goofy on that thing with Kurt Angle, and that interview was horrible, and that dance, like, really just killed WCW. I think that they would just go, oh, no, Shane knows what he's doing. They got a plan,
Yeah.
So, anyway, I just, and he goes, he just says he thought that, that Max Payne's show was far better. Also, he was on a cell phone. He was stuck in traffic.
Had to keep getting to a different phone. Had to take off on an airplane.
Yeah, it was a very inopportune thing and everything. But anyway, this is from Peter Konienzi, who said, regarding the letter you had asking whether Shane McMahon was or was not adopted, when he and his sister appeared on Off the Record, Shane did say he was adopted. When he said it, Stephanie was surprised, but Shane made the comment like it was no big deal. I think it's pretty clear that he's not adopted, and I think that he was probably meaning it like as a joke that nobody got. It's from Michael Young, who says, I'm not sure if you saw the movie or heard about it. Well, I certainly heard about the movie. I did not see Shrek, which is a huge hit right now. The scene, he goes, they have a scene where Shrek is fighting a bunch of the Lord's men in a pseudo wrestling ring. The scene goes 1 or 2 minutes, and it was very funny. He did moves like vertical suplex and several drop kicks. The funniest part was when somebody in the crowd said, hit him with a chair, as Shrek was about to clobber someone with it. No doubt a little reference to the current pro wrestling scene. Thanks on that. This is from Hector Ruiz. So? What? Hit him with a chair?
You think that was kind of a testament to the current pro wrestling scene?
Yes. This is from Hector Ruiz, who goes, I've analyzed back and forth, who's one of the guys on the chat, on the Observer chat. I've analyzed back and forth the WCW television situation, and I think I've come up with the best idea possible for WWF. Even out of all the emails I have sent you with suggestions for the WWF, I think this is the one I like the most because nobody else has come up with it. Aha, you may be wrong, by the way. Because actually, I remember an email coming up with this. But anyway, first, do the invasion angle, which the WCW guys invade WF television. That's clearly going to be done any week now. Then on the first interpromotional show, the build-up should be that when that WCW comes to Raw and says they are the kings of Monday Night Wrestling. It's an interesting way of doing it. So that would set up WWF versus WCW pay-per-view, and the winner gets Monday Night Wrestling, and the loser has to move to another night. Interesting. The WCW could win the rivalry. I know it's unlikely because this might not be taken well by some of the guys in the WWF, but it would help out for many factors. One, fans are conditioned to watching wrestling on Monday nights. Boy, they're losing that conditioning quick, though, but you're right.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. WCW has to win. Otherwise, the feud's over.
Yeah, I know. And they have to steal some guys, too. Fans are conditioned to watching wrestling on Monday nights, so there's a better chance for them to stick around and watch WCW on Monday night if there's no WWF. Let's think about it. I think I kind of agree with that. Like, if you were to do just to say theoretically, WCW on Monday and WWF on Thursday, right? Or vice versa, which would be better? I don't know if it's a wash, because I think that people are more used to watching, although, more people do watch wrestling now on Thursdays than Mondays. So, which is a new phenomenon, about 7 weeks old, right? But, so it's not necessarily the case. I don't know. Two, WCW will gain legitimacy with the fans by beating WWF in such an important angle. Absolutely. They have to, or the thing's going to be in a lot of trouble. I think everyone agrees with that. It's easier to sell TNN on giving WWF another TV show than selling TNN on starting a brand new product on an untested night. Now, that's a good point. If they do want to do that, that is a good point as far as, I think that if you told TNN that we want to do WCW on Monday and we want, say, Friday for Raw, okay? God, but they won't. I don't think they're going to move Raw to Friday. That one just doesn't. I mean, you could. That's a hell of a gamble.
Well, if TNN has a holdup and they want guys like Goldberg who aren't going to be in at the beginning, why would they agree to remove Raw and put a WCW show without those guys in the Raw slot?
There's your big holdup. You're right. Especially if they were afraid to put it on Saturday Night Late Night.
Why would they replace Raw?
Why would they replace Raw, which carries their entire station? Yeah, I think that TNN would be, and again, things
the more I look at this, too, we talk about Goldberg every single day, but if WCW cannot get a time slot, and one of the big holdups is they won't spend $6 million on Goldberg, what the hell are they waiting for? What are they waiting for? If the fans want to see it, the fans are dying to see this guy, TNN won't give him a show without him. They're worried about upsetting the salary structure. They're not going to have a show. It's going to upset more in your salary structure when you don't even have a show. All these guys are going to be out of job. You can't bring in, 24 guys or 30 guys and add those to the WWF roster. There has to be a place for them. And if you can't have a place without this guy, what are you waiting to get this guy for?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'm a lot of those guys, those 24 guys, I'm really scared for them because if this becomes something where, they're only going to have like 10 or 12 guys, all those good workers that are on low contracts, there's just no need for them. Yeah. Unless they have a 2-hour show. Because if they have a 1-hour show, there's not even any need for them. But if they have a 2-hour show, you have to fill time, and then the people like, Kid Romeo and Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Shane Helms and those guys, in a 2-hour show, they'll have time. I kind of think, I tell you what, I really miss some of, I do not miss at all the WCW booking. I do not miss the storylines. I do not miss the top of the card. But I do miss, those cruiserweight matches that would open up the show. Because remember, we would always go show opened with a great match and it went all downhill.
It was all downhill. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not really getting on WWF that kind of high-flying cruiserweight stuff. The one thing that's bad, though, is WWF, because they're encouraging the wrestlers to wrestle more safely, I think that, which is good, and it's great, and I applaud them for this, but at the same time, if they start telling these guys, I'm thinking about a lot of the moves that really got over with the Shane Helms type of guys. A lot of those, if they're out of the playbook, then they're just... then there's small guys wrestling.
Yeah, but you know what? You can still do high flying without killing yourself. Look at the minis. The only time I really get worried about the minis is when they do the chair shots to the head. And they do tons of high flying.
WWF fans will always find where the WWF is, and the ratings for the new show would not be affected that much. It's a good letter. It's a good letter, and it's a lot of things to think about. Got a ton of emails here. I'm going to start getting through it.
Why did Vince offer Steve Regal a carrot last night?
Yeah, and then he didn't eat it, and Vince ate it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what that had to do with anything, but he did.
There has to be some sort of inside joke there.
I don't know what it is, but you're probably right. I'll tell you what, on the
now, if it were a banana, I'd have figured it out immediately.
Okay. On the Goldberg thing, it's funny, it's like pretty much 7 weeks ago, I think the consensus was, and I think that you and I kind of were not necessarily on this one, because I think from the very beginning, I think we both kind of figured they really needed Goldberg. But the consensus of people that I talked with 7 weeks ago was, his contract's too, whether they were in the WWF or WCW guys, it's like, his ego's too big, his contract's too much. It's just like, it's not a good idea to upset the salary structure. You don't want to get people mad, right? All of those same people in the last week are like totally done a 180 on that one. I think that everyone sees, kind of when you look at the big picture, it's just one of those things that I just think it's got to be done. Getting Bill Goldberg is there's no guarantee that this thing is going to fail, and there's no guarantee that this is going to succeed with or without Bill Goldberg. But the odds of it succeeding with Bill Goldberg are so much higher that I think it's just something that you got to do. I almost don't even see a debate in it now.
Yeah.
This is from Mike Coughlin, who says, I just got done listening to Mick Foley here in Chicago. He was on a local radio show for an hour, and let me tell you, he was great. Yeah, he is great. For about the first 5 minutes, he sounded semi-jaded, like he was expecting to get ambushed or whatnot, but after that, he really came across as very well-spoken, did a great deal of good for the image of pro wrestling. It was mostly standard talk show banner. He said nothing big, however, he did say he would be returning to Raw on Monday. I didn't know that. He told us he was coming back.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. He said he was coming back real soon.
Let's say Mick Foley was 100% right now and he had not retired. And some guy decided that he was going to pick up a bunch of these guys that maybe didn't have contracts. Balls Mahoney. Some guys like that decided they were going to start a hardcore promotion. And he could get Mick Foley. But it would cost Mick Foley a hell of a lot of money. But Mick Foley would be, of course, like the hardcore name for his promotion. He would get him if he could, right? Doesn't that make sense?
If he could afford him.
Yeah, if he could afford him, he would get him.
Yeah, if you could afford him, you would get him. Yeah.
And you're telling me Vince can't afford Goldberg?
Well, Vince can afford Goldberg. I mean, it's just a question of, we know what all the questions are, and it's going to be his call. I mean, he may have to start, and, if things don't go really great at the beginning. One thing about Goldberg, I mean, that salary structure thing is important, though, because, a lot of the guys that we're talking about that, like the Van Dams and all these guys, I don't know what numbers are on paper for these guys, okay? For some of the guys. Some of them I do know, and the numbers are much lower. I don't want to say much lower than I would have expected because I knew they were going to be low. I mean, I was told they were going to be low going in because,
How about much lower than a lot of people would believe?
Yeah, the numbers are real low. I mean, when you're talking about some big names and you're talking about $150,000 as your yearly guarantee, okay? And not even a guarantee you're going to make that much more because, WWF, the guys everyone makes more than their downside guarantee when business is good and when you're running around on house shows. These WCW guys, if WCW is not doing, if WCW is not doing house shows, and I don't see them doing them at least for the first several months, and they're not doing pay-per-views, and I don't see them having the interest to do pay-per-views on their own for the first several months, you're not going to get that accrued income to where you're going to top your downside by a whole hell of a lot. So, you've got all these guys that are making, let's just say these guys are making 150, maybe a couple of top guys are making 250. I'm just throwing numbers around, and then you got Bill Goldberg in there at, $2+ million. That's, I mean, granted, he carries it, and Hogan, when Hogan went to WCW, he was making way more than everybody else. I mean, so much more, similar to this, and more than $2 million as well when he made the jump in '94. But and he did turn the company around.
Well, people have to look at it that same way. I'm sure there were a lot of people very angry when Hogan first came in, but look what happened. He turned business around, and everybody was better off because of it.
I'll tell you that. And I will say this, and I was in that pack. Almost everyone, when we heard that contract, 25% of pay-per-view, which was basically what his deal was, 25% of the company gross on pay-per-view, we're going like, that is insane. Eric Bischoff is out of his mind. But you know what? It was worth it for the first couple of years, and then the last 2 years, or whatever it was, the last 2 years it clearly was not close to worth it. And they got bit. They got bit on those last 2 years. We got Bryan BLAIR here. Bryan, how are you today?
Good, Big D. Dave, what's happening, my brother?
Oh, God. I don't know, Dusty, but but anyway.
It's wake-up time, man.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this la-la. I mean, it's good information, but I just figured I'd add a little entertainment to your show tonight.
Okay, cool. Well, we want to talk about current business, and but first of all, why don't you tell everybody about, you've got a book that's been out for a couple months now, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the book.
Okay, it's a book about, it's kind of like a dictionary. Obviously I wouldn't write a book about Bryan BLAIR because it wouldn't sell peanuts right now because, out of sight, out of mind. That's just the way it is. So, you've read the book and there's an opening a little bit about me to establish credibility, but it's basically written because I've answered all the questions that people have asked me. It's more like a dictionary, all the questions people have asked me about the business, and plus added a couple things. Carney, I guess it was December 12th of '99, Jerry Lawler and his son Brian Christopher and I were sitting at one of the tapings, and WWF tapings, and we were talking Carney back and forth, and Brian's really good at it. And a couple of the other guys were, hey, how do you say that? Teach us how to say that. It's only like half the dressing room knows how to speak Carney now. So, in an effort to carry on the business, and I'm a firm believer that the more the people know about the business now, and I wasn't before, but now I am a firm believer that the more they know, it's kind of like the making of Star Wars. The more you know about what went into the picture, the more you like it. So the more you know about the business, the closer you can become. So not only did I, answer the Carney question or try to keep the Carney, which has been a big part of our business for years and years and years, alive, and hopefully it was kind of written more toward the boys to help them to understand, because I would constantly give that. And plus a lot of the radio stations, if you live in Tampa, Bubba the Love Sponge, I'm sure you're familiar with him, everybody speaks Carney, and everybody wants to know how do you speak Carney. So I did an audio portion that comes with the book and did that, and I also, every dressing room term that I had ever heard in my 23 years in the business is defined in there. I mean, and you know, there's some new terms that you use. I mean, that I never used, which has a place in the business, but it was never used in the locker room. But you've developed a couple terms. For example, I like the word work rate. I think that's a great term. We used to just say work hard or bust ass, or now you got the 4 stars, or you know, whatever stars the guy gets. I really commend you for that. But then on the other hand, you know, guys have misused words, and people would say words on television. Russo was famous for that. You know, really dwelling deep into the dressing room vocabulary and bringing it out to the public, and people that are listening to this show right now are smarter than the average Joe that watches wrestling, and not everybody's a Meltzer or an Alvarez. So I would get questions. For example, Apter told me that he ran a story one time, and next to Triple H's picture, he put the word heat, and he got almost 100 emails asking what the term heat meant. And I said, "You're kidding me." And so, you know, between the conversation with Lawler and then sitting down with Gordon Soley before he died, and the whole bit, you know, I was a little hesitant to write the book because it really does take you kind of deep into the dressing room in the short book that it is, but it's a very informative book. It's Smarten Up, Say It Right, and you can go to World Wide Web smartenupnow.com, and there's reviews. I haven't had a bad review. You might not like it because you're a pretty smart guy, but for example, on page 10 of your last newsletter, you said that they did a hot tag behind the referee's back. Well, if you read my book, that's called a false tag.
Okay.
Okay. Just, you know, so everybody can learn something from the book, and that's what it's all about. And plus, there's some classic photos in there. You know, photos that most people have never seen before. And
right.
You know, the thing is with casual fans that are told things like this, and like you said, they get closer to the business, they become the kind of fan that it takes a lot to get rid of them. They're not like the fad fan. And, you know, people used to always say, if the fans find out about this, it'll kill the business. In reality, it's probably held the business more than anything else.
Absolutely, Dave, and it's guys like you guys who you know, at one time, you know, I'll say it right to your face, you know, I couldn't stand you guys for doing this because I felt you were going to ruin our business, and you know how long I've been subscribing to your newsletter. I mean, for a long, long time now. But even though we didn't like you, we'd always be the first guys. Hey, did you get the dirt sheet? We all called it the dirt sheet, of course, in the locker room. And hey, anybody got the dirt sheet? Come on. So everybody would be fighting for the dirt sheet to see what you were saying about everybody. And so, you know, just when Vince brought the business out and exposed it for what it was, sports entertainment, to me it's the greatest business in the world, and it's one of the hardest businesses in the world, too. But when he brought it out for sports entertainment and kind of actually totally smartened up the fans. I mean, God bless Owen Hart, my good buddy. You know, after he died, I mean, Jim Ross on 3 different occasions said everything we do in wrestling is not intended to hurt our opponent. You know, but yet this is real. And you know, so it kind of brought out the white collar person too, whose intelligence was always insulted, I thought. You know, by smartening them up and showing them, because you're still not going to know the finish, the athletic moves that people do now. I mean, they're taking it off the chart, which is alarming to me and kind of scary, which is a whole other subject. But you know, wrestling's it's entertaining, and it's a soap opera. You know, a soap opera is not real. You know, when you go to a movie, it's not real, but you watch it because it's entertaining, and that's what wrestling's all about. And I feel that the more you know about it, the closer you're going to become. And as soon as plus what's going to be good, as soon as this book goes, we've done real well on the internet so far, better than what I expected, just selling it at the smartenupnow.com web address. But when it goes to distribution in July, you know, it's going to bring people closer to your, you know, like there's so many people that copy stuff off you and several of the other websites. I love Scott Teal's website. I love several of them out there, but it's going to bring people closer to the real websites and the guys that bust their butt. And I'm not saying there's not any other good ones that aren't mentioned in my book, but there's certainly a lot of copycats out there, and this will kind of, you know, get people right straight to the horse's mouth.
So it's going to be available like most of the major chains?
It's going to be available, yes, just about everywhere you can buy a book.
Oh, really? Wow. That's good. Now, I got a question about 2 people real quick. First of all, How's Jack Briscoe doing? Because I know he was your hero when you were a kid, and I know that you and him are very close.
Oh, we're really close. I just talked to him today. As a matter of fact, we're going out. I started taking Hiro Matsuda out to lunch about 6 months before he died, and I've been very blessed in the business world, and fortunately things are pretty good for me. But anyway, I started taking Hiro out since he helped me so much. I believe you got to give back to those who have given to you, and Hiro gave me a lot. I mean, two and a half summers of his life, and you didn't pay anybody then when I broke in. You just went in and you fought for your life. And out of the 2.5 summers I was there, the only 3 people that succeeded in that was myself, Paul Orndorff, and Hulk Hogan. And a lot of guys, Scott Hall started, he quit. I mean, so many guys, there's a lot of guys. Dan Spivey started there, he quit. Out of over 100 guys during that time, we were the only 3 that made it. But anyway, I started taking Hiro out, then I started taking Gordon Soley out, and then Jack Briscoe joined, and now it's become a ritual. Like every 2 weeks we go out to lunch. And so actually this next Tuesday, it'll be Buddy Colt, Carl von Stroheim, and Jack and myself. So yeah, Jack's doing great.
So his health is turned around and everything?
Yeah, he's doing really good right now. Real good. He's doing a lot better. He's got some, a little bit of nerve problems on his right side, but other than that, he's doing good.
And with Hogan, I mean, we were hearing something about maybe he's doing something with the Universal on August 8th. Have you heard anything on that?
Yeah. I kind of. I think it's not the Universal that's ever been the hang-up, really. It's been the television, which I'm sure you're aware of because I've read that. You knew about the bond that USA wanted, and that's been the real hang-up. But there's no problem with Universal as far as what they want to do there. That's not the hang-up. The hang-up is, as you know, you can't run a major promotion without the right television. So whether it happens in August, I'm not sure. At first it was going to happen in May, so I'm not really at liberty to say exactly what's going to happen, but I do know that there's a strong possibility that could happen then.
I want to mention something real quick from yesterday's show. Somebody had emailed if Mick Foley had ever wrestled at Sushi Onita in Japan, and in fact they did wrestle in a 6-man tag match on a major FMW show. I hadn't remembered it, but several people emailed it in, so just want to make mention of that before we get back to Bryan Blair, who is our guest today. Bryan Blair has been in pro wrestling for some 23 years, wrestled Florida territory, lots of different territories during the territorial days, then went to the WWF, was part of the Killer Bees, then after not getting out of wrestling because he's always been around wrestling, managed and owned some Gold's gyms and ran his own business very successfully. And speaking of that, so someone who has been in a, it's not really somewhat of a related field, but run your own business and having to understand the pressures of that. We talked about WCW a couple of times and things like that. I mean, I know that you had wanted, I don't know how hard you pursued it, but certainly when they were going down, you had expressed interest in at least talking to them about getting involved. And clearly, the people who ran their business from a business sense made some astronomical mistakes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You can go ahead and respond. Yeah.
Well, they made huge mistakes. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the smartest guy in the world, but I put my own hard-earned dollars into the business, into my own businesses. I opened up 4 Gold's gyms from the start, built them from scratch. The first year of my first gym, we grossed $125,000. When I sold them, we were grossing over $3 million. And I did it all by myself in a way, but yet I didn't do it by myself because the only thing I did was created a team. And a great team is much better than any great individual. And I think the problem that Eric Bischoff had was, A, it wasn't his money, and B, he didn't, I don't think he had a lot of business experience. And you have to have that because everything's about the bottom line. Dave, you know that, man. You got so much stuff going on right now, between the Observer newsletter, between Yada.com. I mean, you've got employees, but I had actually almost 90 employees that I was overseeing, so I developed systems, checks and balances. Of course, you got, it's a personal business, a people business. Well, business is business, whether it's the gym business or the wrestling business. And, Eric and I, as a matter of fact, we had a deal. He shook my hand, looked me right in the eye. I was gone to WCW. waiting. I called him, couldn't get a call back, so he wound up, never calling me back. I saw him a couple times after that, and I, never said anything to him about it. I figured if that's the way he wanted it, that's the way he wanted it. But I truly feel like I have enough knowledge of the business that I could have, and I've never gotten out of the business, even as long as I've been at Gold's Gyms. When I left WWF in the end of '89, I never stopped wrestling, and to this day, I've never wrestled less than 1 day a month, and I've been all over the world since then, and I'm still working right now. I mean, it's just, and I'm probably in the best shape of my life. I mean, you could turn to, I don't know what page it's on, like 49 or 50 of the book, and that's what I look like right now. I don't know if you guys got a book.
The one with all the arrows of the injuries?
Right, 49. Right, so you can see what I look like, and I mean, that's no steroids, no nothing. That's just hard work, and that's, I don't have the wear and tear on my body like a lot of the guys have. So when I go out in the ring, now I don't know if you've seen any recent tapes of me, I just, feel very, very fresh out there. And I feel like, I'd be a liar if I had said I didn't lose a step. Sure I have, but, I've also gained wisdom, and, sometimes wisdom is more important than speed, provided that you can still perform to the people. And I don't think I've had a bad match, in a long, long time. So.
Why do you think you've held up so well?
Because of exercise. I stretch 5 days a week. I do cardio 5 days a week, and I hit the weights 3 days a week. And so I've done that, just for so long, that, and constantly changing my routines, keeping up on the latest fads, diet fads, learning to cut out the carbs to keep the fat off the waist, and I think that's why. I mean, of course, if you look at page 49, you see how many injuries I've had. I stole that off of Mick's book, and I'm sure he didn't mind. But I just wanted to show people, even though this book kind of takes you really deep into a lot of places that nobody's really gone, other than maybe you guys. The whole object of the book is to show people, that it's, what's inside the business as far as the jargon, the talk, where to go to keep up on the business, but also, how tough the business is, and that's why I wanted to show all these injuries. And I've never been a real risk taker like Mick, but you can see, man, I've got a torn rotator cuff. I've had 3 concussions, and I've got all this documented. I mean, I've got everything that's in this book is documented.
Okay, but here's you've had 3 concussions in 23 years. We know guys who've had so many concussions like 3 years in.
I know.
It's really scary.
It is scary. I tell you, Dave. And Bryan, it's a scary thing, but because people are taking the business to new heights and levels as far as doing hardcore stuff that, one of these days, mark my word, and I hate to say it, of course, Draz, he got, that was kind of a fluke accident. I don't think he was doing anything spectacular. That was just something that happened. I mean, but, and then the guy in Tampa that one time who broke his neck, that was off something simple like I think he was doing a sunset flip. You remember that deal? When that guy in Tampa about, I don't know, in the 80s or something.
Chuck Austin.
Yeah, Chuck Austin.
Chuck Austin was what's now the Famouser, the Billy Gunn Famouser. He took it from Marty Jannetty, and his head went straight down. He didn't take it right.
Right, exactly. But now here's little things like that happen in accidents. Now here's guys like the Hardys, who I think the world of. But every time they do some of the moves they do, and in the ladder matches and the things like that, I just hope God's with them. They scare me. I mean, and they're taking it, not just them, but, Mick started it. He's the first guy that really, in my mind, started the real hardcore, take it to the next level. And then, the next guy has to do the next move, and the next guy has to outdo the next guy. And one of these days, it's going to be a sad day when, somebody breaks their neck and dies, and or they're a paraplegic like Draws. I just hate to see that kind of stuff.
One thing I noticed when I was watching even like last night with the Hardys and everything, there is a big Jeff Hardy. I mean, not so much Matt, but Jeff Hardy wrestles a much smarter style now than he did a year ago. Because I remember, they would do all those crazy move after move, and now, if you watch the Hardys, it's more they're trying to get by on their popularity. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely, Dave. And another reason they're doing that is because they're hurt. I mean,
he got banged up for doing all that stuff. Sure.
They're banged up every night. There's not a match that goes by. I mean, I love Triple H. I mean, he's hurt now, and look what's happened to Steve. I mean, I've wrestled with so many of the guys that are working now. I mean, Malenko and Guerrero, and I wrestled, or I've been on the same cards. Like I was with Rocky Johnson, the first time he had a match. I've wrestled with Mick Foley and Chris Benoit and Steve Austin. I mean, so many of the guys that I've worked with now. I watch them and the guys that have been around a while, and they wrestle a kind of a smarter, more intelligent style. And I shouldn't say intelligent, because I'm sure that the Hardys are intelligent guys, but that's their style. They're lighter guys. But after a while, it's going to take a toll on them, man. What's going to happen to them when they're 43 years old?
I think there is something to them just being lighter, because when you really look at them, they're actually very lucky. I mean, if you look at Austin, had the broken neck. Rikishi's shoulder's all messed up. He just came off another injury. He got Hunter in his leg. Eddie Guerrero. I mean, they're guys that work an easier style that have gotten some really bad injuries, and these guys they're actually pretty lucky.
I don't think it's lighter. I think it's younger. When you're, there's a total difference between working at 23 or 24, whatever Jeff Hardy is right now, and working at 35, 36, how Steve Austin is with all those years in the business. And Bryan can just, Bryan, one thing I want to ask you is as far as like, changing and working, like what do you do differently in the ring, and also when it comes to training, how would a 25 or 30-year-old Bryan Blair, be different as far as like what you do to keep yourself in shape? I mean, more stretching and more cardio or whatever, as compared to Bryan Blair today.
Well, it would be the same. Actually, nothing's changed really. I would still wrestle the same style that I've always wrestled, because I like to adapt. I've had a lot of great teachers. I mean, in the front of my book, I named a lot of them that I've had just some great teachers and some great people to be around. I wouldn't change any of the routines really that although I have added stretching, so that's kind of not quite accurate. And I didn't used to stretch when I was younger. Now I found that, stretching is just, God, I don't know what I'd do without it. I've had 2 bulged discs in my back, and the doctor said I had to have an operation. Another doctor said you got to have an operation. Third doctor said you got to have an operation. Finally, I went to a rehab place, and this was like in 1991 after I got back from Russia, 1992, I think, when I got back from Russia with a tour with Afa and Sika and Ken Patera and some other guys. Anyway, that was one of the best tours I'd ever been on. But my back, I had hurt my back a little bit, and I hurt it again in Japan in '95, and it just through going to this place called Health South, this rehab place, they taught me some stretching, and I applied it to some other stuff that I had learned in the gym. And to make a long story short, the stretching caused me to get off the anti-inflammatories, the pain pills. For 6 months I was on anti-inflammatories and pain pills, or I couldn't walk. And slowly but surely the stretching took all that away. And now it's not only a cure, but it's a prevention. And everybody needs to stretch. That's in the business at least. But everybody should, period.
Now I want to ask you, we're going to start taking phone calls in just a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you just about Paul Orndorff, who you've known for forever, and what is Paul Orndorff up to right now?
I just talked to Paul. Well, he's at home right this minute. We should call him. But anyway, he's a fun guy, and I used to sell Cokes in the Tampa Stadium. I'll try to make this quick. How long before we go to the break? Give me an idea.
Let's see, how long, Al? Just go as long as you want to.
Okay. When I was a kid, Paul Orndorff was also a kind of a hero of mine. I sold Cokes in the Tampa Stadium, and him and Freddie Solomon were like just studs. I mean, with John Matuzak at the University of Tampa playing football. And I'd set my Cokes down every time the offense was on, because I always loved Paul and Freddie. Those were my 2 favorite players. And now Freddie's a great friend of mine, too, who played for the San Francisco 49ers. But anyway, Paul became friends. Boom, he started with Matsuda. One thing left another. Then he started in the business a little bit before me. And I went to Mid-South, where he was. That was my first territory that I was sent to. And Paul was there, and so we were on the road a lot together, and there was a lot of ribs pulled. As a matter, I got to tell you this one. Anyway, and him and I, we've fought together. We've done everything heterosexual together, let's say, that you could possibly do. My wife's gone, so I could talk some trash now. Anyway, but we used to heal a room. So the definition of healing a room is also in my book. Well, that's where you check in for one, and there's 2 beds so that way you save the $6 or the $8, which at that time meant a lot to us, to save money. So we healed a room in Tulsa because we knew all the days in had 2 beds in the room. We figured that out after a while, so we always stayed at the Days Inn. So we healed the room in Tulsa. I got a room, he got a room. We got the same room, excuse me, and we had just got back from doing something, and my back was sore. So I was sitting in the back seat of this little rent-a-car, and Paul was driving, and we stopped and get to the Days Inn, and he wants to, come on, we got to hurry up. All he wanted to do was work out. You know, Paul's always been a workout freak. Got to get to the gym. Well, anyway, so he says, here, let me help you get out of the back. And I thought, oh, that's awful nice of Paul. So I'm getting out of the back. You know, he pulls the seat up front as I'm getting out of the back. I'm bent over, and he gooses me really hard, and my head comes straight up and hits the top of the roof. And I've got a big goose egg. It almost knocked me out. I'm not kidding. So anyway, my head's spinning. I called him some names, and I know I listened to the commercial earlier, and I guess we're not censored or anything, but I'm not going to repeat all that. But anyway, I called him some names, and fortunately, he let me get by with that because I would have never wanted to fight. Paul's one of the few guys I would have never wanted to even fight. But I don't like to fight, period, anyway. But unfortunately, I've been in my share of them. But Paul, he started laughing and thought that was hilarious. So anyway, we get up to the room. My head's aching. I stopped and put some ice in my towel, got some ice, and Paul had this habit of never wearing underwear, and he was always in a hurry, so he wouldn't take his tennis shoes off, and so now he's pulling his jeans, trying to pull his jeans over his tennis shoes so he can keep the same tennis shoes on to put his gym shorts on. So here he is, he's jumping up and down, trying to get his jean pants out from over his tennis shoes, and he's bent over, and I'm looking over, and my head's throbbing, and I see this hairy ass, suntan ass, facing me. So I look next to me, and there's a brand new number 2 pencil at the Days Inn, just brand new sharpened. So, but I get the eraser end and I lick it. He's jumping up and down trying to pull that thing, and I look and I line it up just perfect, and all of a sudden, boom, right in his booty. He stands straight up, and as he did, the force shoved the whole pencil, about 10 inches of pen. I don't know how long they are, but the whole pencil went up his ass. Now he's jumping up and down, screaming, "I'm gonna kill you! I'm gonna kill you, Bryan Blair! Guys, darn it! I'm gonna kill you! I can't get this pencil, guy!" Now he's jumping up and down, screaming. And I'm laughing so hard I can't stand it. So now he's really getting mad. He's, help me. And I'm not going to reach into his ass and try to grab the pencil, and he can't get the pencil out. So I run out the room because I thought he was going to hit me or something. So I run out of the room, and the maid's sitting there, and the maid's looking at him, and he's trying to grab this pencil out of his ass. And the poor maid had no idea what was going on. So I just ran down the hall until finally he figured out how to get the pencil out of his ass. I don't know exactly how he did it, but that was absolutely hilarious. And so he says, "I'm going to get you. I promise I'm going to get you." So I've got my guard up for a couple days now, and a couple days go by. So we're somewhere, I forget where I think we were in Oklahoma City, and you know, it's time for bed. You know, he goes in, does his thing. I go in, I go to lay down, and I lay on my bed, and I put my arms between my pillows, and all of a sudden I feel this sticky sticky stuff all over me. Well, what the son of a gun did is he masturbated between my pillows, and now I've got his kiss on me, is all over me, and I can't believe that he did this to me. So anyway, that's, you know, just one of the so many ribs that happened between him and I. I mean, it's
you could have written stuff like that in your book, and even the fact that like some of the newer fans wouldn't know who you were, I'd still make a hell of a book.
Bro, I mean, I got so many stories. I mean, how about Dusty and Andre? Andre was a great friend of mine who I miss, and Dusty was a good guy. But if you need to go to break or anything, I got a couple funny stories with them too. I mean, I got some great stories.
Go and do this one, and then we'll go to a break.
Okay, here you go. Okay, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Okay, everybody knows Dusty is probably the most, you know, even now, I think even the younger fans still know Dusty, would you say? I mean, not all.
Everybody knows Dusty.
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Everyone listening to this show knows Dusty for sure.
Okay, good. Okay, well, that's super. So, well, you got to picture this. Here we are. It's January. We're in the Mid-South territory, and I'm driving my '72 Lincoln Continental that I bought sometime when I was in high school. It probably had about 200,000 miles on it, and the heater broke, and it's freezing cold. Now we left in the daytime, so it wasn't so bad, you know. And Andre's just got a T-shirt on. Dusty's got all his gimmicks, cowboy boots, and he's got his jacket with him and everything. But
polka dots.
No, he didn't have polka dots. But anyway, Dusty was in the back seat, and Andre was in the front seat. And we're coming back from Greenville, Mississippi. Now, we had already loaded up. If anybody knew Andre, he was the heaviest drinker. As a matter of fact, he was preserved because having giantitis, I forget the exact name.
Acromegaly?
Yeah, acromegaly. So anyway, having that, the average giant, I think the average age, average lifespan is like 33 years old. Well, Andre was in his 40s when he died away. God bless him. When he died, God bless him. He was a great guy. But anyway, Andre was preserved because we had bought three 12-packs, 2 bottles of Crown Royal, which only Andre drank. And then we had a small cooler, and we decided since it was so cold outside, I mean, I'm telling you, it seemed like it was below zero. There was snow outside. I have no idea how cold it is. We're in the car. We're in my car now. Now you got to picture this. The American Dream's behind, kind of halfway behind Andre, and a little bit in the middle. Got his legs spread out behind my seat. And we're telling jokes and we're laughing, and Andre's chugging the beer, and when we had a cup, so when we peed in it, Dusty just dumped it into this other small cooler because we all had to pee. Obviously drinking that much beer, and heaven forbid, I'd hate for my 2 little boys to hear this. But anyway, we're coming back, and Dusty, somebody said something, and Dusty's peeing, and he all the time he was saying, "God damn, people are so cold in here." He called me Beeper. So anyway, it's Bryan. He said, "God damn, people, it's cold. You're freezing the American Dream. I can't believe you're doing this to the American Dream, man. American Dream should be driving in a limousine, let alone no heater. I got no heater." So you got to picture the Dream talking like this, and here's
He's actually doing this.
And drinking his Crown Royal with a T-shirt on, and he don't care. So somebody said something really funny, and Dusty's getting ready to take a pee, and it's ice cold, and we're probably about 75 miles still outside of. It's about a 220-mile trip from Greenville to Jackson, Mississippi. So we're about 75 miles outside of Jackson, and Andre moves forward because he was laughing so hard. And then when he went backwards, just as Dusty was pouring the pee into the cooler, into the styrofoam cooler, the back seat broke, smashed the cooler all over Dusty, and the pee went all over him. Now he's soaked, and it's freezing, and he's going, "God damn, people, you peed all over the American Dream. How did you pee all over the American Dream? Man, he went off on it." So it was hilarious. It was so funny, and Andre would not stop laughing. So now the next week we're in New Orleans. And Dusty finally got over this. We're in New Orleans, and we had eaten oysters at Felix's and drinking some beers and do that stuff. And there's this place where these legs swing out. A lot of your listeners are probably familiar with that. It's a bar that's been there for years, and these legs kind of swing out, and they entice you to go up there. And the boss said, "Hey, let's go up here." So, I was looking for a place to pee then, so I had to pee really bad. It sounds like the Mick Foley, Al Snow jokes. But anyway, I had to pee really bad, so we start to go up these stairs, and I said, "Man, there's got to be a restroom." Dusty says, "Oh, don't worry about it, Andre. Okay, come on, let's go up here. There's a restroom up here." And it's in an L-shaped platform, and I remember on one side of the platform there's a tree. Just as we're climbing the steps there, the lights go out. Now it's completely pitch black. So I turn around toward the tree, and I start peeing. Now I'm peeing, and all of a sudden, man, it gets kind of an eerie feeling, boss is saying something, and you're hearing some noises going around, and I didn't hear Dusty saying anything, and all of a sudden the lights come back on, and I look down, and Dusty's shaking his leg, and he always tucked his jeans inside of his boot. Well, instead of peeing on the tree, I pissed down Dusty Rhodes' leg. You can call him up right now and ask him. Completely peed down his boot. And you talk about the American Dream slang language. God damn, people, 2 times in 1 week you peed on the American Dream. You will never be booked again. I will be assured to it that you are blackballed. You will not be booked ever again. It was just hilarious, but just things like that. Sure, I could have said that kind of stuff in the book, and maybe if I write it, or when I write another one, I'll tell those kind of stories. But I hope people appreciated that.
There's an item. God, we always talk about OneWrestling.com, and there was an item today about Jerry Lawler meeting today at the WWF headquarters in Stamford, and all I can tell you is that I have always been of the impression. I know that there are people in the WWF from day one who have wanted Jerry Lawler back. That when it came to announcing for the new WCW, that there were key decision-making people who, made no bones about the fact they would have liked Jerry Lawler in, but Vince McMahon does not want Jerry Lawler back, or did not want Jerry Lawler back, and ultimately, It's Vince's. It's Vince's decision, and maybe things can happen. But what I'm saying is that I know it's been talked about for WCW. Anything's possible. I mean, I know, it was something under consideration as a color guy for the new WCW. They could even bring him back to Raw on Monday and move Paul Heyman to Tuesday. That has been talked about as well. But ultimately, whenever these discussions happen, Vince McMahon in the past has nixed them, saying that he just thinks that Jerry Lawler, when he quit, the nature of walking out on a live taping was bad, and then the thing of putting the email addresses and everything like that, and he thought that it wouldn't be good to bring him back. But if Lawler were to, my feeling is if Lawler were to say, look, I'll come back, and Stacey Carter doesn't have to have a job, and everything's fine like that, I think Vince might be amenable to it. I don't know that. So, anyway, I guess that's the situation there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
My feeling is well, first off, everything's mendable. By case in point, my good friend Jesse Ventura, coming back. I mean, talk about heated.
Yeah.
Vince was so mad at Jesse, that he could strangle him, and the same thing was Jesse. But of course, money talks. And now that the ratings are sliding and things are a little bad, well, first off, let me say that I like Paul Heyman a lot, and I've got the utmost respect for him. But I don't think he is not even nearly as good as Jerry Lawler. And Jerry Lawler added so much to that show, and him and Ross were just so much peanut butter and jelly to me. I mean, they just mixed so well that it's just not the same without him. Do you kind of feel that? I mean, one thing. Let's get one thing straight. And I love to do this to everybody. I love friends that can right up front, and you can tell if they're your friends or whatever, when you agree to disagree, because everything in the wrestling business is an opinion. So if you don't like what I say, that's your opinion, and it totally has no bearing on what I think about Bryan Alvarez or Dave Meltzer or whoever I'm talking to. That's just the way it is. When I do business or when I talk about anything, adults need to agree to disagree. So you state your opinion.
So I think in some sort of matches, especially matches that involve like a lot of submission holds and psychology, that Paul Heyman is better than Lawler. But for a 2-hour show, Paul is so intense and trying to push something so hard, and there's not enough light. And there are times that I miss Lawler when watching Raw.
Right.
And then, but lately, I'm starting to like Heyman. I think the thing is I think Ross is much better with Lawler than with Heyman, because when Ross and Heyman, there is that heat, and some of it's probably worked when they're on the air, and some of it isn't. But there's an uncomfortableness, and Ross and Lawler fit together like a glove. So I think that Ross's performance has not been as good since Lawler left, and that may be, and that may be one of the reasons why Ross is pushing for Lawler to come back.
When I look back at old tapes and I listen to Ross and Lawler together, there's something special about it, and I think part of it with Heyman is so into the writing that he knows exactly what to talk about when he's out there doing commentary. It's almost like he's out there and his job is to explain his own stuff, and he does an awesome job at it. But I think just as a duo, I think I kind of would like Ross and Lawler better.
Yeah, I think that's well put, Brian.
Also, I want to ask you, Brian, before we get into the phone calls, as a businessman, Bill Goldberg in the WWF, what's your thoughts? Yes or no, or you're a wrestler. I mean, the business about like bringing a guy in for more money than pretty much everyone's making, who is coming from the outside, has not really drawn in that company at all. Yet at the same time, there's the potential and the name value of what you could do with him if everything clicks.
Yeah. First off, they should have never beat Goldberg.
They should never beat him. Yeah.
Everyone says the same thing, except Kevin Nash.
Yeah, and I've followed everything. I follow everything pretty close and watch everything. I think. Well, let's answer this question first. Will Goldberg come back? In my opinion, not now. He's got a couple $1 million a year to sit down. Of course, I guess they'll give him 50 cents on the dollar, Time Warner.
Let's go with the theory that Vince goes to Time Warner and goes, I'll buy the contract. Because he's of no value to Time Warner anyway.
Well, he has no value, but see, he could do this. Time Warner, correct me if I'm wrong, is offering him 50 cents on the dollar for a complete buyout.
Yes, they are.
Okay, so that gives him $2 million let's call it. It may be a little more than that, but let's just call it $2 million. Well, then Vince is really just to make things even and have Goldberg working would only have to come up with $1 million on the downside. He could give him a downside and also give him an upside so that he could make more than what his guarantee was because, let's face it, why would you want to get up off the couch other than for ego reasons or boredom reasons, which is a big factor. I mean, if he's bored and, people get that way, I've been that way.
I get the impression he's not bored.
Well, okay.
I mean, everyone who says that he's very happy to sit on the couch.
Yeah, well, if he's happy to sit on the couch, I mean, why would you get up during the next 2 years? I mean, he's still young enough to keep working out and having a good time, and then take that free lunch. I mean,
I'll tell you what, he may have the greatest job, even more than Hogan, in the history of wrestling.
Really, I agree.
I mean, literally,
it's another Eric Bischoff mistake. And
yeah.
I can go on and on and on about Eric Bischoff, and believe me, the guy's not a dummy, and he's a smart guy, and he's learned a lot as he's gone along. But in my opinion, as adults, he was put in a position, and God bless him for being able to manipulate the right people, Brad Siegel, whoever he manipulated to get into the right position to be there. But again, it wasn't his dollars, and he cost. You gotta put blame where blame is. When the NWO, when they did the NWO angle, which he got from Japan and came in, and him and Hogan put that thing together, and they did it, and it clicked, and there's an old saying too: never brag about tomorrow till tomorrow comes. And their egos were flying, and they were on top of the world. Well, I don't think that he had the knowledge to be in the position that he was in. He didn't have enough checks and balances and systems because the whole place turned into the inmates running the asylum, and you can't have that in business. And the buck stopped at Eric, and that's just how I see it. I mean, let's go
to Chris in Massachusetts. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing really good.
Brian, I just want to say I didn't buy your book. I actually probably will after hearing. You discuss a lot of the terms and stuff. I kind of thought maybe it wouldn't be interesting, but at the top of the show you talked about why it is interesting, even for people that have been following the sport for a while, so I'll probably pick it up. But I'll tell you one thing, I would definitely buy your second book if it had all these stories.
I appreciate that, but let me do real quickly, Chris, so you know that, the book's $9.95, but 50 cents from every book goes to the Cauliflower Alley Club. I've set up a deal with Carl Lawler, who is a great guy, one of the board members of the Cauliflower Alley Club. So 50 cents from every book will go to that, and I'll present that check to him in February in Las Vegas at the convention, and I hope everybody out there comes. And you can join the Cauliflower Alley Club, too. All the fans can, and everybody can. And I'm a people person. I love people, and I'd love to say hello to everybody, share pictures, share stories, share fun. I've got a lot of other stories. I mean, that's just a couple little things. I could tell you more stories. I mean, I've got some great stories with Mr. T. Me and Mr. T hit it off so well. I mean, I just loved him, and when he got the cancer and everything, I was so bummed out. But thank God he's doing better, and he's actually making a little comeback now. But he was going to be our manager. But I appreciate the fact that you consider to buy the book, because most people, if you go to a publisher, like I was offered $10,000 up front. So my book's self-published, but as Dave knows, you can go two ways, and Bryan probably knows too. Dave's written Powerbomb, not Powerbomb, but the Histories book.
Tributes book.
Tributes book, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That's available at Powerbomb.
That's right, everybody. Powerbomb.com. I got my book Tributes. We hardly ever talk about it, but it's a lot of good stories in that book, like on JYD and Andre and people like that.
Yeah, let me tell people straight from the heart. It's a great book. The only thing that's missing from the book, and I already told Dave, is Adrian Adonis. But anyway, and he has a reason for that. But it's a great book. If you get a chance, get it. It's worth every nickel. I'm sorry, I started thinking about tributes, so I'm thinking of Bruiser Brody and all my good buddies that are dead now. God darn it.
Yeah, you were talking about, what was it, after Mr. T?
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of fun with Mr. T, but we're talking to Chris, and Chris brought up the book. But anyway, I just want to say, I definitely appreciate, obviously, you buying my book. But, I know what I was talking about. If you have two ways to publish a book. You either can...
Oh, yeah.
You can self-publish a book, or you can go to... a regular publisher, and you tell them your story, and you lay it out to them, you give them excerpts, notes, and they'll tell you what they'll give you. Well, I was offered $10,000 from one company and 41 cents a book. Okay, so I'm giving to the Cauliflower
41 cents off a $10 cover price?
41 cents. Yeah, but they have to go out and do everything. From there, you have no financial output whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the majority of people that write books, we're not talking about Stephen King and guys in that league, but talking about the majority of people that write books don't have, $25,000 or $30,000 to lay out for what it costs to do everything for a book. Once you get your ISBN number and you have a formatter and an editor and a cover designer and all the things that go into a book, it's not as easy as somebody thinks. But what I wanted to reiterate is I'm giving to the Cauliflower Alley Club more than what most people actually make off the copy of their book. So anything that's anytime you buy the book, you're helping out the Cauliflower Alley Club, and those funds are all distributed to wrestlers in need. God bless Johnny Valentine, who's passed away. Guys like him and people that have had a couple bad breaks.
I'll ask you about someone who we're going to talk about on June 27th, as a matter of fact. And I guess when you were growing up, he worked in Florida, not all the time, but he was in and out. Is Ray Stevens? Oh man, Ray, what a performer! That guy, to me, was one of the most polished workers ever. I mean, even when he got older, I was fortunate enough to work with him a couple times when he was just passing through the Georgia territory. When actually, I've been very fortunate to be around the business in a lot of eras to see the first WCW, the first Turner going to Columbus, Ohio, in the Georgia territory, going into Georgia Championship Wrestling, going into other territories and becoming the WCW, and left shortly after that. But another great story, I could tell you a great fight story with Tony, when Tony Atlas got his ear bit off by Paul Orndorff. Paul Orndorff and Tony Atlas. Tell everyone about that story. Oh man, well we were coming back from Wheeling, West Virginia, and it was Paul, Tommy Rich, Tony and myself. Tony Atlas, Paul Orndorff, Tommy Rich, and myself. I'm driving the car. Well, inside the dressing room prior to that, Tony was on one of his roid rages, and believe me, Tony and I are buddies, and he would tell you this story right now. But anyway, Tony was in the dressing room and just ranting and raving and making everybody feel uncomfortable because he was pissed off at the promotion. He might have had to do a jizz for somebody. So anyway, he's saying nobody can kick my ass but Andre the Giant, and that's a maybe. And he's strutting, and he's and that's a maybe. He might be able to kick my ass, but nobody can kick my ass. I'm a bad MF. And he'd hit the locker, and we're listening to all this stuff, and it's just making everybody feel real uncomfortable. And Paul's just sitting there, and he's got his little spit thing. He's sitting in a pair of shorts. Of course, no underwear, pair of shorts, never wore underwear, so you know that. Don't buy Paul Orndorff underwear for Christmas. And anyway, he's strutting up and down. Paul's got a pair of shorts on, tank top, and we're leaving. So Paul gets to the car, and he says, "Man, I hope he's not going to keep on with this kind of stuff." And so I said, "Oh, he's okay, Tommy. What's up, boys? Tommy is always the partying fun guy." And anyway, we're in the car coming back from Wheeling, West Virginia, and Tony pulls his seat back, and Paul's sitting right behind him, and Tommy Rich was behind me. So Tony pulls his seat back, and it kind of squashes Paul's legs, and he says, "Hey, Murdoch, could you move the seat up?" Because that was like the standard phrase, because Murdoch used to, if you go to the audio in my book, I even tell a story, because inside of my book also is an audio. Did you guys listen to the audio? I never listened to the audio, no. You're kidding me. I read the book. No. You're kidding me. That's half the book. Oh, man. Go to page 67. If you haven't listened to the audio, man, golly, hey, brother. Anyway, go to page 67. There's a password in the book. You enter the password, and it's got the most hilarious spoof on the XFL. I don't know if you guys got another computer there or whatever you could do, but if you could listen to that and play it's sudden involuntary Carney syndrome, there's a bunch of spoofs. Once you get past the first five, but I kind of talk about Murdoch, and he did that to me. He did that to everybody. He'd move the seat back where you couldn't, had no leg room, and he thought it was real funny. So anyway, Paul said that to Tony, and Tony looks back and he says, "Look, Paul, don't you dare call me Murdoch, that redneck. Don't even associate me with that redneck right now." And Paul says, "Oh, well, Tony, you need to calm down." And Tony said,
somewhere along these lines. I can't give you the exact words, but I'm going to give you a very close verbiage of what took place. And so Tony says, now, Paul, you know you can't mess with me. You know I'm a bad MF, and ain't nobody can kick my ass except maybe Andre again. And he said that, and again he says, and that's a maybe. And so anyway, Paul says that's bullshit. He says, I'll kick your ass right now. He says, oh yeah, but you don't want anything to do with me, Paul. You know I'm gonna kill you. I'm way too powerful for you. Blah blah blah. Paul says, Bryan, pull the car. He says, Beaver, pull the car over. Again, we're going into my nickname, but that very few people know. But anyway, he says it's actually Beaver, and it got switched to Beeper, but that's a whole new story. Gerald Briscoe did that, and Dusty Rhodes did that to me. But anyway, so
that's how to teach you from peeing on his leg twice in a week.
Yeah, really. So anyway, he says, pull the car over. I says, and Tommy Rich, you ought to hear. This was a classic. Tommy Rich is screaming, now guys, please now. Tommy hated violence. No, please now, no fighting. Don't do this now. Just talk it out. Everything's going to be okay. Paul said, pull the car over, Beeper, right now. I says, well, Paul, I can't just pull it over. He says, pull the effing car over right now. And in the meantime, Tony's talking trash. I'm going to kick your ass, Paul. And his nose, his big nostrils are snorting now. It's like a bull with, picture Tony Atlas's nose with steam coming out. And now he's all pumped up, and Paul's in the back. Pull the car over, Beeper. I said, okay, I'm looking. And so I see a bowling alley off to the right. So I pull the car over to the right. Tommy Rich now, he's almost in tears. Please, guys, please. So there's a bunch of trailers without the truck on them parked next to this basketball court. So we walked past. I said, well, we'll go right over here then. Because I was pretty curious, too, to see what was going to happen. I mean, I've seen Paul in so many fights, and I've never seen him even get close to get his ass kicked. I mean, he was one bad MF.
Look at Vader.
Look at Vader, yeah. I mean, I've got so many stories besides that. You have to ask Paul some of the stories when we were coming back in this. One redneck tried to kill us and run us off the road, and that's another story in the snow coming up this mountain. But so we pulled the car over finally. Tony's dressed in cowboy boots, jeans, and a tank and a T-shirt with his sleeves rolled up, and he's strutting. And Paul takes his crucifix off his chain, and he says, "Hold this for me, Beeper." I said, "Okay." In the meantime, Tommy Rich now he's crying. He's got tears in his eyes, literally. Please, guys, please don't fight. So anyway, Tony's kind of doing the little shuffle thing in the parking lot, saying, "Come on, Paul, come on." Paul walks straight up toward him. Tony swings at him. As Tony swung at him, Paul tight-waisted him, and they fell down. He hooked his leg. They fell down. They started rolling on the ground, and all of a sudden I heard, "Ah!" as loud as you could hear it. And all of a sudden, "God dang it, Paul, you cheated. You bit me. And I see Paul go, "Phew," and his entire bottom of his ear, Paul bit the entire bottom of his ear off. I mean, a complete huge chunk. And he spit it out. So Tommy's shaking. He grabs the piece of ear. He's crying now. And so, Atlas has got tears in his eyes. He's holding his ears saying, "God damn, you cheated. I mean, there's no cheat. There's no such thing as rules in a fight. I mean, come on. I mean, if he would have picked up a gun, sure, that might be cheating. But, he bit him with his own, that was his own fault. He started it. So we take Tony to the hospital. This is Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think this is 1985. And we take him to the hospital in Wheeling, West Virginia, or right outside of Wheeling, wherever that little town was right there. Get him to the quickest hospital, and Paul and Tony's holding his ear, saying, "God dang, Paul, you're lucky my ears bit off, or we'd get out and do this again." And he said, "Stop the car, Bryan. I'll do it again right now." And Tony finally said, "No, just get me to the hospital. So anyway, we take him to the hospital and dropped him off, and he left Georgia Championship Wrestling. Never came back after that time.
Oh wow. Let's go to Ed in Texas before we hit a break. Ed,
guys, how you guys doing today?
Hey, Ed.
We're really entertained.
What I wanted to ask you real quick is something I read on OneWrestling.com from a Piper interview. And do you know the story about him and Kerry Von Erich being on like a 6-inch ledge of a building?
I never heard
vaguely. But I think he told me that story. But I don't remember the whole story. So it's like his vague memory.
What did he say?
I just talked to Kevin about a month ago, and I have Kevin's email and his phone number, Dave or Bryan, if you guys want to talk to Kevin sometime. I lived with David Von Erich for almost a year and 3 months, and it was an education, and they all died long before their time, and I have nothing but respect for their family. You know, Fritz is dead. The only ones left now is Doris, who was Doris Atkinson, Doris von Erich, who was Fritz's wife. They wound up getting a divorce, you know, after Chris. I mean, that's a tragic story. I mean, I don't want to get off onto that subject, but I just wanted to tell you that. And Roddy's a good friend of mine too. But I talk to Roddy occasionally, but I just haven't heard that story myself.
Okay. And one more question for you, Bryan. When Hogan does have his show, will you be wrestling on it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I know you're in Florida, and I know you're supposed to be like a good friend of his. I figured you would be on the show.
Well, him and Mr. Wonderful.
Have you guys even discussed that?
Him and Mr. Wonderful were my best men in my wedding.
Really?
So that's and I just was over at his mom and dad's house yesterday, and yes, we are. We're very close friends. But you know, a lot of I get heat with I got heat with Hogan before, you know, because he knows how much I like Dave's stuff, and he gets mad because Dave gets down. You know, because like I said, you got to call a spade a spade. Whatever's on your mind, you say it. And you know, in Hogan's view and many others, Dave doesn't really appreciate some of the things that you know, Terry's done, and that's Dave's opinion, and that's whoever writes. That's everybody's writing their own opinion. It's kind of like I'm always in the middle of everything. It was like, you know, when
that's the wrestling business.
Hogan and Jesse and Ventura and Macho, what a, you know, being in the middle of that and trying to be friends with all three of them, it's kind of easy for me, but I just sit back and listen, and you know, I'll call Randy one day, or Randy will call me, or whatever. What's Hogan doing? Hey, what's up? You know, and they're trying to find dirt on each other, and I don't have an answer for any of them because I just don't want to get in the middle of the stuff. But
Hogan and Randy have always had this love-hate thing from the beginning. It's like
that actually reminds me of a question we get a lot. Hogan, before WrestleMania 9 or at WrestleMania 9, had a black eye, and you know, we have people writing in all the time going, "Oh, he was in a fight with Randy Savage."
And I always assumed it was a speedboat accident.
Yeah, was it a speedboat accident, or did they get in a brawl, or what happened?
It was Wave Runner. It was
the
Wave
close.
Runner. I know exactly what you're talking about. He fell off the Wave Runner, and the Wave Runner came back and hit him in the eye, and he could have very well drowned. And a guy named Ellis, who does a lot of the stunt work and stuff, he did everything for a lot of stuff for WCW. But Ellis was on the other Wave Runner, and we were back at the shore, and he came in and he was all screwed up. That's not true. He was not in a fight with Randy.
Yeah, I mean, I had always heard that story from a lot of different people that, you know, because he almost lost his eye. I remember that WrestleMania, his eye looked like hell.
Oh man, how about I could tell you the story about when Beefcake broke. I pulled Beefcake.
Oh, the parasailing thing.
The water with the parasailing deal. What a story that was.
Oh my God.
Oh,
I remember.
You remember that?
Oh, everyone, he nearly died too,
yeah,
right?
I mean, I was right there when I pulled him out of the water and got him to the shore. I said, "Brutus, can you open your mouth?" And he said, and I trying to get him not to panic. It looked like he was going into shock, and so I tried to I said, "Open your mouth," because I didn't want him to swallow his tongue. And he said, "My mouth is open, it's open." And he had his mouth open, yet his teeth were all the way closed because it had cracked his skull all the way across. From the nose to the cheek plates, and his upper teeth were just falling down onto his bottom teeth. Think about that for a second. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Dave, I know you need to go to the break, but I wanted to ask something real quick.
Sure. Go ahead.
You guys were talking about the Cauliflower Alley Club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I know they have their conventions in Las Vegas, and I'm going to Vegas in July, and I was wondering, do they have like a museum or anything like that?
No, there's a wrestling museum that is in Iowa, Newton, Iowa, that just opened a couple of years ago. In fact, they're inducting, are they inducting Jack Briscoe into their Hall of Fame like in a week or two?
Tim Woods.
And Tim Woods, right.
Right.
And the Cauliflower Alley does conventions. They used to do them all over the country. I don't know. I mean, I know that Vegas is the main one. It used to be Studio City, California for years and years. And I know that the group out of Schenectady, New York, I believe it is that we talked about on the show a few days ago. They're talking about doing like their own pro wrestling museum, Hall of Fame, kind of like, because, you know, like that part of New York, there's all kinds of, like the baseball museum and things like that. They're, as a tourist thing.
That's the George Tragos Luthez.
That's the one the Luthez one is the one in Iowa, and the one in Schenectady is, I know, like, Kowalski and George Steele and people like that are kind of involved with one of the local politicians.
Jack got involved in is the George Tragos Luthez professional.
Right. Jack and Tim Woods are being honored because it's the Luthez one, which is it's actually an amateur and pro together.
Correct.
Museum, and they more have like the old time pro wrestling, like the Gotch and Hack and Schmidt up through the 20s. And then they honored, they honor like pro wrestlers that were great amateur wrestlers as well, like, Strangler Lewis or Dick Hutton or people like Vern Gagne, Danny Hodge, people like that.
I love Luthez's book too, by the way. That's a good book.
Oh, that's a really, that was the first book by a wrestler, at least in this country, I don't know about Japan, where, he pretty much opened up about a lot of the business. And, the one thing about, we talk about the history of, there is no real history of wrestling, it's just a bunch of stories. Because, you just don't know what's true and what's not. And that was like the closest thing to a guy. It's a guy who really was in the thick of things for about 50 years, who probably knew about his, I say except for like maybe, like a couple of the main promoters, like the guys who would probably like Barnett and Sam Mushnick probably knew more than anyone, or Vince Sr., about that era. But, Sam's no longer with us, and, neither is Vince Sr. And so this is about the best, from history of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's about as good as we're going to get, I guess. I mean, it's not perfect, but I thought it was such an entertaining read.
Yeah, especially if you wanted to understand the. That's what I'm saying. The more you understand about the business, the closer you become. And in Lou's book, you really get a real insight of where the business started, how it started, and just a bunch of the stuff that took place, prior to today.
Let's go to Sean. Let's go to Sean in Pennsylvania. Sean, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. How's it going? I'm woefully aware that you haven't been taking so many calls.
Hey, Brian's been awesome,
I had a couple comments. First off, maybe it's just me, but did it bother anybody else that Triple H just could not put over Jericho in his, when it came to his injury? It looked like...
In what sense?
What do you mean he didn't put him over?
In the sense that, I know everybody most people who follow the business know he was hurt before he got put in the walls of Jericho. But in the wrestling business, it's really commonplace for people to say, so-and-so put me out.
Right. This is how, I know what you're saying.
When they were on the other side of the ring, and, it would have made so much more sense because, the alternative is for him to say, my quad tore while I was walking, as opposed to saying my quad tore when I was in this horrible move from Chris Jericho, and, I'm going to get him when I get back. That would have seemed like a more professional thing to do. He half-ass put it over, so that kind of tells me that, somebody might have mentioned it to him that, he had other ideas.
I think
there were only two things with it, and one was after he made the save, he couldn't even walk to get to the table. It was obvious that his leg was, completely ravaged at that point, so it really wouldn't make sense for him to be limping over to the table and then afterwards go, I was totally fine until I got put in that hold and then my quad tore.
The other thing also is I think that in his mind when he's coming back, when he's coming back, but when he's coming back, I don't think he's coming back for a program with Jericho. So why make people like if he goes in there and goes, Chris Jericho did this to me, then if he's out for 6 months because of Jericho and he's not coming back for a program with Jericho, then it's like it doesn't really mean anything because it makes people are going like, well, why is he going to fight Austin? He should be mad at Jericho instead of saying that he tore his quad and you got what?
The Jericho feud could be secondary. He's like first thing first. I'd take care of you, Austin, and I'm coming after you, Jericho. You don't do that.
Yeah, but
if he's coming back as a baby face, though, unless Jericho goes heel between now and then, which sure, he could easily happen. But at this point in time, I don't think that if you look at the long term, they're probably going like, Hunter is gonna, the big money is Hunter and Austin, and Hunter comes back as a baby face, so the Jericho thing just doesn't really fit in. It probably doesn't fit in the plans. I think as much as anything. Plus, I think in that situation, everybody was watching, and everybody saw how bad he was limping before he got in the walls of Jericho. So it's kind of hard to make something up because no one's everyone's going to kind of see through it.
I don't know if he really cares that much about what people say about him politically, but there'd been a lot of talk for a long time about how Hunter was always saying that Jericho hurt people, and to go on TV and say, Jericho hurt me. Even though it would be part of a storyline, it would just be, it's like something that everyone expected him to say in the back anyway, so maybe he just figured, why cause more trouble?
Okay. And my second thing is, this will probably be very unpopular, but maybe Bryan can have, Bryan Blair can comment on this as well. I know everybody runs down the Big Show, and I don't think he's a good worker by any stretch of the imagination, or he obviously doesn't work incredibly hard. But when it comes to the weight issue, I mean, I think in a sense it might be belittling, how hard it may be for someone, especially someone of that size, to be in the gym every day and exercise. I mean, I don't know what thing he's got medical issues he might be having.
Nothing right now, actually.
But you know what I'm saying. I mean, I can imagine it. I mean, guy, could he even get on a cross training machine or a treadmill? I don't even, what I mean?
He can get on the sidewalk and
some
jog.
machine he could get on.
I don't really have any sympathy for Big Show and his weight issue, just because anybody can lose weight. He doesn't have a medical problem right now, and he's making $1 million a year, and I don't think it's asking too much for him to drop a few pounds.
What are your thoughts, Dave?
Brian, what's Brian? Because Brian's friends with him, probably.
Yes. Well, personally, I agree that, he's not the greatest worker in the world. He's by far no Andre the Giant. He's not even close. I think he's been used wrong in a lot of situations and in a lot of ways, and it's probably affected him mentally about where he's at. I don't like to comment about anybody's personal life, but he went through a few things that were really tough for him, and with a marriage and a baby and several issues, which again, that's his own personal business. But I just think that the guy's got talent. There's no doubt about that. But you either work the big man style or you work a regular style. I mean, he hasn't been put. As being billed as Andre's son and being the Giant and being overinflated, his size overinflated. I mean, I don't think the weight issue is that much had he been drawing money, and that's the bottom line. If you're going to draw money and be entertaining, and you're the kind of guy that the person wants to see on the television, then they're going to push you and they're going to put you in the right position, and it just hasn't happened for the show.
I think one of the things with him, and Brian, you probably agree with this, is that when you talk about like not being used right, somebody like him cannot be a character that's on TV 52 weeks a year.
Exactly. You're exactly right. They would never do that with Andre. And
it's funny is because when he was in WCW, I remember having a conversation with Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon was going, boy, they got, this is like very early in his career, and Vince McMahon actually said to me, he goes, they have so much in this guy, and obviously Vince thought that because he gave him a 10-year contract at almost $1 million a year.
Yes.
They got so much with this guy, but they're doing it all wrong. You have to book a Giant a certain way. And of course, he knew his father booked Andre that exact way. I mean, he wasn't saying anything that was like, any great revelations. It was, something that I would say, you would say, we would all say, yeah, how do you book a Giant? Well, let's see, how do they book Andre? And he drew everywhere, right? We'll just copy that. So, but then when he got him, he actually did the same thing, and he was so familiar. And a guy like that, I just don't think, if he's just another guy, if he's just another guy on the card, he's not that great of a worker. But if he was a special attraction and you didn't see him much, and you really played, had him do the Giant style, as a novelty, on a couple of big shows a year, it probably would have worked.
Exactly. You're exactly right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Ryan, you're friends with Paul Orndorff, you said?
Yeah, very good friends.
How do you think how did he react to that whole thing with the psychic guy in WCW?
Gary Spivey, was that his name?
I think that's one of the worst angles ever.
That was bad.
Hey, you know what? WCW is famous for the worst angles ever. I mean, to put the belt on David Arquette. I mean, break. I mean, some of the stuff, I almost want to puke. You know why? Because I love all the guys that are in the business. I mean, I don't think you can I don't think you can find, at least on my end, there's not a guy in the business that I can really say a real bad word about it. I really care about the boys, and it just still kind of makes me sick that it got screwed up that bad when they had things on top of the world. But I'll leave it right there. I could really do a real shoot interview right now, but I'm gonna bite my tongue for a minute because you just.
Well, thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, Raymond. You know what though? I mean, who was it? It was Chris Cruz was actually the one who was on this show, and it was just like, look at all the. I mean, look at all the jobs that they screwed up, and I mean, basically screwed up this entire industry, because without competition, this industry is just so much less, I don't know what the word is, less interesting to follow. I mean, it's and I mean, what could have been better? I mean, I remember in '88 when they bought the company from Jim Crockett, and me being naive, I mean, even though I recognized that wrestling people had to run wrestling, I knew that like business people who never watched wrestling were never going to get wrestling. But I figured that they would hire Bill Watts or, in my naivete, or somebody who knew wrestling would come in there and with the Turner money behind him and CNN and all this cross promotion, this was going to be it. This thing, I thought they were going to challenge Vince, which eventually they did. But, it never came close to what it should have been. And then, in the last 2 years, they just gutted it with like so many. I mean, we used to laugh about it until, at the end when it just wasn't funny anymore.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it got ridiculous when Vince Russo, featured himself so much. I mean, it was sickening. I've never met Vince Russo. I don't know Vince Russo. I just know, I'm sure that Gerald Briscoe used to tell me what great ideas this guy had, when he was with WWF. I'd sit down with Gerald, who's a great friend of mine, and we'd talk about it, and he'd just brag about Russo. But what was happening was there were so many other guys inputting their ideas, and the buck stopped at Vince. I mean, which was fine. So just
like I always tell people now, like when somebody does something good, they goes at Paulie's or whatever, and it's like, it is, but it's Vince, because Vince is the one who says yes, Vince is the one who says no, and Vince is the one who, ultimately Vince is responsible. If it's good, it's Vince's credit, and if it's bad, it's Vince's fault.
Bingo. And so it's the same thing applies to Eric Bischoff. So in other words, what happened to WCW was not the boys' fault. It was Eric's fault, in my opinion. So, and again, I've got nothing against Eric. I think he's learned a lot. We all learn from our mistakes, and I still have a lot to learn about business, and I continuously read and try to suck things up. Even when I was doing so good in the gym business, I knew competition was coming my way if I can kind of correlate it like that. So I knew there would be like a Bally's or something coming next to me. Well, what do I do? Well, first off, I have to look at what's working, what's right, and try to capitalize on that and make sure that everybody's happy. And the first time you start treating your preliminary talent or your underneath talent like crap and treating everybody and letting the other guys get away with stuff they shouldn't get away with, you're just making a recipe for disaster. Whereas Vince, I don't care where you are in the card, and I worked for Vince Jr. I worked for Vince Sr. for 2 years, but I worked for Vince Jr. for like 6 years, and I know Vince very, very well. I mean, very well, and I could just say that he minds business because he put his hard sweat and his hard dollars, and he's continuously thinking. I don't think he made, obviously, hindsight's 20/20. Obviously, he made a bad move in the XFL.
Sure.
And I can't wait till you hear my XFL spoof spot. Don't forget to do that, okay? Guys, please go to the audio. You're going to love that. But anyway, Vince minds shop, and he knows his business, and Eric really does it. So the bottom line is, if you don't have a vested interest in the company or somebody to answer to, it's got to be a flow chart. Okay, in a flow chart, there's one guy at the top. If you take the CEO of General Electric, okay, well, he's got, they're a huge conglomeration, but that CEO is inevitably responsible for what everything else does, and so he has to surround himself with good people, good team, but inevitably he makes the final decisions.
Another real problem at the end was there just was nobody to answer to. I mean, even if there was, nobody knew who it was to talk to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Because, why? Because they were in such disarray. Because they had just come off a year where they had made $50-60 million or whatever they made, to a year where they're losing $50-60 million, just throwing those numbers out there. And everybody's scrambling who pointing fingers, and there was, then all of a sudden the chain of command became where you didn't know who the chain of command was.
Real quick, let's go to Max. Max, you're going to have to be our last caller. What's going on?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going really good.
All right, I just have a quick question for all you guys. What do you think about this whole Booker T situation and that he's got out of his Time Warner contract? Is he going to sign with WWE?
Sure, of course he will.
Is he in WWF? Is he going to show up on Raw or what?
Of course.
There'd be no reason to get out of a contract like that unless you're going to sign with the WWF.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he had to deal with them. They've been high on him. They booked his world title win. Although I'm sure that if Eric was there, that would have been the same booking. But he's going there, and he's always been going there. It's just a question of how he was going to get his buyout, and he was always going to be there probably on the first day they were ready. So it was just, I think, the timing of him doing it is like, okay, now they're going to make the move, and I figure he'll be on TV within 2-3 weeks.
All right, that's cool. And just for Mr. Blair, what do you think about this whole new WCW? Do you think it's going to be a success, and what do you think they're going to have to do to make it a success?
In my opinion, I would first test the waters. If they find it receptive to the fans, the first thing I would do was bring The Rock over to the WCW.
Really? You think
Absolutely.
He would draw ratings?
Absolutely.
It would establish the company immediately, and it would also forgive me right here, but it would establish the company immediately, I know we're running out of time here, so let me just leave it at that. And I know a couple great ways to do it, but we'll just leave it like that.
All right, yeah. That sounds like a great idea.
Plus a good benefit for his schedule with all the movies and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the whole key is that if there is anyone in wrestling where if you're trying to establish a new show that people will follow him, it's either him or Austin. Those are the two guys. So, and right now, just with the nature of how Austin is, I don't think Austin's the one that should jump.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I don't think they should turn him heel right then. But that, everybody's got an opinion, but I tell you what, I thought the Raw show on the 28th, the Monday show, I thought it was a great show.
The last 2 weeks.
Pardon me?
Last 2 weeks have been really good.
Very good, yeah. The Thunder was good. It's great to see Benoit, Jericho, and Guerrero get a push. I mean, I love them all. I mean, they've been underused and abused, in my opinion, so to speak. It's just, you can't see the same four guys, and these guys deserve a break, and, I just wish them all the best.
Before you go, Brian, I'll ask you something, because you've been around the business forever. Have you ever seen anyone, we talk about the Kurt Angle, have you ever seen anyone come along so good at all aspects of the business so quickly as Kurt Angle?
Absolutely not. He is beyond the shadow of a doubt, the quickest to rise to the level that he's at. He's at a level, right now I would say probably the two best workers or the three best workers, in my opinion, that WWF has is Benoit, Jericho. I mean, you got Guerrero too, but Triple H is probably the best worker. But I would say that Angle is right in there in such a short time that it just blows my mind. I mean, people have no idea. I mean, the guy has been working less than a year and a half, and he has got the polish, the shine. He's got it all. I'm so high on that guy. I just think he's my favorite for the future of our business and carrying it on, and plus keeping a little bit of old school, which I like. I love to see. I mean, I thought the match Monday with Benoit and Austin was awesome, but I also thought on the one of the pay-per-views, I guess it was 2 pay-per-views ago, the Benoit Angle match. People pop for wrestling if you know how to do it right. And then, of course, you got to put everything in there. A good card is made up of a rounded card where you've got the cruiserweights, you've got the flying, you've got a little bit of everything. And to me, that's what makes a great show. And Kurt Angle will be an anchor of our business. He already is, but I mean, it's amazing.
It's amazing to think old school with Kurt Angle has been in 2 years.
Oh, unbelievable. He's such a great guy. He comes to Tampa and does a wrestling clinic here at Sickles High School. He's given away so much stuff to the kids. I mean, he's in with people that do different wrestling gear, and he's supplied many of the less fortunate kids here with all their wrestling gear. And I could just go on and on. I know we're running short. I just whatever you do, please save me 15 seconds so I can plug my book.
Go ahead. Go right now.
Okay, right now. Real quick, please, if you get a chance, just go. All you got to do is go to smartenupnow.com. That's SmartenUpnow.com. Listen to it. If you get the book, there's a code in the book. You've got to listen. And Dave, I can't wait to hear the audio part of it, which is on page 67. Remember that 50 cents of every book goes to the Cauliflower Alley Club. I promise you, it's the best, investment to me. I mean, if you really want to get deep into the locker room, check out the book. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, call me and I'll figure out a way to make it up to you. And, you guys do a great job. I appreciate being on the show. I've got so many other stories. If you guys get bored and need an old has-been, give me a call.
Hey, Bryan, you were awesome today. This was one of the most fun shows in a long time. And we have fun every day. So, I mean, that's saying something.
Well, that's great. And for the younger people that don't know, real quick, I was on almost all of the Saturday night main event shows, which are still, ask Dave, the ratings those had. It's first for, the LJN action figures. We won the wrestling album, the first Slammy Awards, won the first Survivor Series, was in the first Royal Rumble. I've been featured on over 14 WWF tapes for sale. Cover the first wrestling album, WrestleMania 2, 3, 4, and should have been on 5 except for the argument I got into with Vince. But anyway, that's beside the point. Thank you guys for everything, and please call me anytime.
Okay, thank you very much, Bryan. And want to mention that next week on the show, of course, Monday and Tuesday, we will not have guests. Wednesday, Jeff Merrick of Live Audio Wrestling, one of Canada's leading wrestling experts, and that'll be a good show for sure. Dave Republic, we've never had on the show. He's a promoter in of Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling. They actually run probably more shows than, except for WWF, I'll bet you they run more shows than almost any company because they're running 3-4 shows a week. And Friday of next week, Chris Pope, who has written 2 books on wrestling collectibles. So you have any questions about memorabilia of wrestling or just talking about wrestling, that'll be Friday. And we also have Ray Stevens Tribute Show June 27th. Ric Flair will be on that one. So everyone put that one down on your calendar, and we'll see everybody on Monday at 5.